Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Derek Riddle. And Derek, your NDE was in 2020?
Yes, it was in October of 2020.
That's fresh.
Yeah, yeah, not too long ago.
So I'll let you start wherever you want and I'll let you take as long as you like.
Oh, okay. Well, a little bit of the backstory. I had had a vertical gastrectomy surgery, which is a weight loss surgery where they go in and they just cut out a good portion of your stomach. It's not gastric bypass. Bypass is when they reroute all your guts. Okay, what I had was literally just they cut out part of your stomach and just make it smaller, so everything stays intact and everything. You just get a smaller stomach, and with that came some stitches. And so, um, uh, October 15th of 2020, I had a plane ticket to fly out to go visit my, or not visit, to go help my grandmother drive a U-Haul back here to Spokane. Okay, and before any of that happened, I had gotten like I'd had these three seizures. It was the first seizure was 2 months after my surgery. I just started shaking and I didn't know what was wrong. I went to the emergency room. I couldn't stop. They said I had an allergic reaction to something and they sent me home. A couple weeks later, I had another one, but it wasn't as bad. I like wrote it out. But the third one, I actually went to my primary because I had a normal checkup that day. Um, and I got a flu shot. And on the way home, I started doing this again. They called the ambulance. I went in. Same thing. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and they sent me. Anyhow, I got on that plane on October 15th, and as soon as we landed, I started feeling really nauseous. Like right when we got off the plane, I started having these waves hitting me and stuff like that. And my I just started feeling really heavy. My inside started hurting really bad, and that night I was just rolling all over back and forth. I mean, we got to grandma's. It took all day packing her up, and the plan was pack up everything all day, hit the road at 7 in the morning because we're driving from just outside of Las Vegas, and from there through all the way, there's hundreds of miles of desert where there's just nothing. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm rolling around in the bed. I mean, I felt like I had 50 pounds of concrete in my guts. And come 7 a.m., we get the phone call that it's time to go. And I'm like, I'm bent over like this. I can't even hardly stand up. And I'm like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And my grandma called me and said, well, we're kind of all ready to go. What do you want to do? And I seriously was this far away from saying, you know what? But we got people that are helping us drive. Everything's packed. I can ride this out. But something told me, no, you better go get checked. So I made everybody wait while I went to the doctor, and there was, eye rolls and stuff and everything. And I get there and I tell them, I think I popped a stitch. It's the only thing I can think of. I think I popped stitches from my surgery. Blah blah blah. They take the emergency CAT scan. uh, they come back and he says, Mr. Riddle, you're going to go for a helicopter ride today. And I'm like, huh? And yes, you have very large black areas, which is indicative of internal bleeding, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, they put me on the helicopter and I got there. And as they're getting me off the helicopter, they're asking me to sign forms of whether or not they can give me blood and whether or not they could harvest my organs. And it was like at that moment, I mean, the helicopter ride, I'm like, wow, this is serious. They're taking me on the helicopter ride. But then when I started signing that paperwork, that's when I was like, wow, this could be real. And when I woke up, that is when my surgeon informed me that my stitches and my stomach were fine, but where I had had my surgery and where my spleen sat, it appeared there was a laceration in my spleen, and my spleen had started to bleed out, and then my body like formed a scab over it, and just through normal living and moving or whatever, I compromised it, and it would bleed out and then it would cover again and then bleed out and cover again. Those seizures that I had were septic seizures. So I was in full-blown sepsis is what that was. And the
Was
thing
this a
is,
medical malpractice situation?
I can't say too much about all that stuff, but
Okay.
common sense will definitely lead you down that road.
Okay.
The dangerous thing about sepsis starts here and it ends here. And 99% of the time, the hospitals don't know you have sepsis until you're like right here, you know. So for me to have that 3 times and come out of it. Anyhow, so when I got on that plane, the pressurization from the cabin to my spleen and it blew it wide open. And that's what caused everything to happen so fast. So, in a sense, getting on that plane, according to my doctor, he said that's probably what saved your life because it made everything happen so fast to you to go to the emergency room. Because I can tell you now, you would have never made the ride through all those mountains. Because by the time something would have happened, we would have got to you. You never would have made it. So that's what I woke up and found
So
out
did
on.
they have to stop and go to emergency room instead of on the flight they started to?
No, my grandma lived in a little town called Pahrump, and it's about 80 miles outside of Las Vegas. So I went to their emergency center, which was a small emergency center, and that's where they called the helicopter, and the helicopter flew me back to Las Vegas to the main Spring Valley Hospital.
But I mean, this happened in the helicopter, right?
No, no, my surgery happened at the hospital
No, no,
after
no.
that.
Yeah, I know, but I mean where it went boom. Where
Oh no, the pancreas or the spleen. The spleen exploded on my airplane flight going to
right,
Vegas.
right.
So my spleen was just bleeding out while I'm trying to pack this U-Haul, and I was really feeling like crap. I still made it through the whole day of getting my grandma loaded up and just being like, "Oh my god, like, I'm dying." And it was 7 a.m. the next morning when everybody's ready to go, and I'm like, "Okay,
Gotcha.
yeah, okay,
Two
there's
different
some,
helicopter rides. Okay.
yeah, yeah." And anyhow, when I woke up, my doctor, he explained exactly what had happened. And my spleen, they had to take out my spleen. Half of it, my spleen was dead, and half of it was already decayed, and that was where the abscess and everything had come from. And my left lung was shut down. So at that point, I was in organ shutdown as well.
Wow.
Yeah, but but waking up and him telling me this and me in my head going, what the hell just happened? Because from the time they got me into the operating room, I had one of the most intense experiences of my life. Last thing I remember was going under. And if you'd like, I'll explaining my experience exactly
Sure.
what happened. So I'm under, and I open my eyes, and it's just like, as I'm looking forward like this, I opened my eyes, and it looked like a big platform, but it was huge. It was like a sea of people, like the biggest mosh pit concert you could think of. And it was like Grand Central Station, New York, in a lot of ways. It was just, it was loud. It was very hot and steamy. I didn't see flames. I didn't see a lake of fire, but it was like, I just like, that really sticky feeling when you're really, really hot. You ever been somewhere where it's really humid and it's just like, I could feel it. And I'm looking over this big sea of people and I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? And towards the back, in the back of this big sea of crowd of people, I could just feel the energy back there. And it was just bad, bad. It was negative. It was like evil. Is that like
So they
in the
weren't having a
back?
good time. It wasn't like a really a
No,
concert because they're not having fun.
no, 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 no. Nobody was having fun. And that was the very first feeling, was like nobody wanted to be there. Like I didn't want to be there. I was, and I'm like, what the hell is this looking? And as I'm looking this over and I'm understanding like, oh, those people, those are bad people in the back. That's where they go. Those are the bad. And I'm feeling this crowd, and as I'm gazing it over, the crowd starts to break off into sections of lines where they just start to narrow down and get thinner and thinner. And as I'm looking over this crowd, I'm feeling the energy and everything change to where it's not so black, and it's getting better until I'm seeing these lines and they're like breaking off into singular lines until it gets to this point where it looked like a big slipstream, like in the movie Finding Nemo, that underwater, but it worked like like when you go to the bank. I mean, like poof, and those lines where it got, and then finally to people, it got right there. They would step into that, and it all made sense to me for that moment. How I felt, what I perceived is they were coming back here to do this again, this thing we call life. Um, it all made sense to me, kind of like in the back are the people that, for some reason, I don't know why those numbers come to my head, but like you have to be in the back for 900 years before you can get back into line. And now these lines, mind you, every one that goes and the next is that person's lifetime. So, in a span of what we think of time, like who knows how long that is, but I feel like it's 900 years before you're even allowed to get back into the line. Um, but anyhow, it brings you back here because what I felt was like life is a test, and like you have to get this test perfect. You have to get a perfect score, because if you don't, then you just have to do it again. It's an automatic do-over. And like you can, how do I explain this? I brought up Ted Bundy. Like, you can praise Jesus at the end and say, "Please save me," and yeah, okay, but that don't work from here to here. That it's got you. It has to be the essence of who you are. You have to like literally earn your goodness. And yes, you can be saved, but there's no loopholes. There's no like, okay, you don't get to be an a-hole your whole life and then and then be like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, my bad. Can I get in the good club now?
And on the opposite side of that coin, hopefully we don't go to hell for one bad day.
Right, right, right. But I also felt, the thing with is like, while I'm seeing this and I'm seeing the energies, it was almost as if life kind of made sense to me for a moment on how I should live or how I have been living. The 10 Commandments, like the 10 Commandments as they came to me, they didn't come to me like as a list in the book. It was basically moral calls. Like I was seeing things like hunting and fishing is okay. For example, like if you're hunting and fishing to feed your family, that's one thing. But if you're going to go shoot a giraffe to be like, bro, look at this, like
Ego.
moral calls in between. You know, everybody has a soul, and and free will is a very thing, and you have a choice, and I mean, like like when you're lying, are you telling your friend like, hey dude, your haircut looks great, when it's really just horrible? Or are you getting on the witness stand and putting an innocent man away for life? That's the thing about free will. You have the call, you have the judgment. It's up to you to decide. Everybody is responsible for their own action. There's no like, he made me do it or this is what made me do it. In the end, right before you do it, you still have that choice to stop, you know. Um, and if you're literally forced, I mean, it's in here. It's in here. And anyhow, so like I'm seeing this, looking over this, and it's all making sense. And I'm like, oh wow, they really screwed up. They got away. And in the back, when I say like the bad energy, like it's not just serial killers and stuff like that. I mean, it's the black-hearted people that own corporations that make people homeless and sleep like a baby at night about it. It's the neighbor that's taken advantage of you your entire life just because they can. Or it's the black heart, it's the emptiness of just not caring. And upon seeing all this and me realizing what all that was, and like I said, this is like a big platform, and I felt like I was just above everybody, so I could see all this going on. And I looked up to my left like that, and when I did, I saw the light coming down like this, and it looked like it was like in a shape like this, but coming from the corner. And I instantly, it felt like, okay, when I looked up and I saw that, I instantly looked away, and I felt like you don't look the divine power in the eye. You just don't. And that was like, okay, like I humbled, and I didn't look, you know. And in that moment also, when I looked, I felt like, oh my God, it's them. It didn't feel like a singular entity. It felt like a council. And they asked me, and the thing is there was no like words of conversation. It was all like telepathic, like it was just all in my head. And they asked me, do you believe in God? And um as being a child, and I was raised Catholic, my mother was Hispanic, and Catholic religion is very, very big. My mother was extremely religious. She had the Holy Santos, and she had the candle in the corner that she kept lit. She had holy water. She said her rosary. We did fish on Friday for a minute. I was in going to Sunday school when I was a kid, and I remember the nuns rapping me on my head because I'm left-handed. That was a thing or whatever. Um, but anyhow, she was extremely religious and raised very Catholic, and I had a really bad childhood. I don't want to go into all that, but um, just when I started learning about being taught about how God is loving and this and that, and there's no bad, and learning this, and then as I got older and seeing about the church scandals with Catholic religion and stuff like that, and me just thinking and using um, my own free will of knowing what's right and what's wrong, and like how can you be, well, how can you call yourself a holy man when you're being evil? And it just made me question my own religion. But the fundamentals of like being good and things like that, I've always tried to live that way. So all that was all mushed together in like my answer to, do I believe in God? And it was like, oh, I do, blah blah blah. But I think, and when I said that, what happened was this: I instantly went from crouching like this to like I had no choice. It was like a gravitational pull or something, and I went like this. And at this point, I'm looking at the light. I had no choice. Like it made me look like it, and I could totally feel the energy beaming me, hitting me right here in the chest where you see Ozzy. And it instantly looked like if I took a deck of cards and put it right in front of your face and just flip the deck like that, that's what it looked like. And it spit out two orbs like right next to me. And in these orbs were 2 moment life reviews of my life. And true stories, these are 2 moments that happened. The first one, I was like 5 or 6. I was really little. And I had woke up at like 2 in the morning. I had to go potty to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom, and on my way back, I don't know why, but I decided to swing through the living room and just turn on the TV. And I turned on the TV, and back in like 1983, 1982, like way back, they would show at like 2 in the morning, they would show these commercials of like the starving kids overseas and stuff like that. But back then they were really, really graphic. I mean, they showed the kids that were literally on their deathbed. I mean, cheekbones and everything. And the flat and just, and I turned that on and I looked at that and I saw that, and I just, at the top of my lungs, I let out a wail that I didn't, and I'm just, my mom comes ripping out of the bedroom. She was asleep. She's in her underwear. Oh, the poor lady's got one. What the hell? What? And I'm standing there crying. Mijo, what are you? what's the matter, Mom? What? And I'm like, the kids. And she's like, what about them? And I said, how come they have to be hungry like that? That's not fair. And I just remember her looking at me and being like, okay, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I literally just thought somebody was dying in my living room. And now my kid needs an explanation on life and why they're starving. And she's like, oh, mijo, come on, let's go to bed. And so she walked me back to my room and laid me down in bed and basically gave me the best short 5 minute speech that she could on, oh gosh, sorry, my phone dropped there for a second. I can
All
find you.
right.
There you are. There you are. Can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yes. Everything's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah. So she just said, mijo, God has plans and everything, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't love those children, and he's not doing that to them on purpose, and but and she just tried to reaffirm me that God is good and blah 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 and everything, and that was that moment. Okay, and that was the moment in the orb, and then that was the end of it. The second orb, the second memory of my life was years later. Okay, I'm a preteen. I was like 11, 12, something like that. We had two teenage boys that lived at the house next door, John and Jamie. And my mom, she was a waitress, single mom. She worked at the truck stop, and she worked graveyard shift. And at that time, in the early '80s, if you left your kid at home, nobody really said anything. And it was Halloween night, and I wanted to go trick or treating. And the boys next door had offered, and they were a few years older than me. They had offered, hey, you can come with us. And I was like, all right, cool. Hey, is that okay, Mom? She said, yeah. So here we are, three young boys, Halloween night, trick or treating. We were on a mission. We took our pillow sacks from our pillows, and I mean, we were running to the next house, trick or treat, trick or treat. I mean, the goal was to get as much candy as we could. And
No parents to slow you down.
right, right, no parents to slow me down, no waiting for your little sister. So anyhow, we cleaned up, and I mean, this was Fontana, California, which is 50 miles outside of LA. So I mean, we're in the city suburbs. I mean, every house was giving out candy. This pillow sack must have been, this full across the bottom. I had to pull over my shoulder. So great night. We get home, everything, and I'm eating my candy, and I'm like, all right, man. Next thing I know, there's a knock at the door, and I answer the door, trick or treat. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go look around, and Mom didn't buy any candy, and I'm like, okay, there's no candy. Well, all right. Well, I'll just give him a couple pieces of mine here, and I'm like, here you go, here you guys, there you go. And I go sit down. I go having a knock knock, trick or treat. Oh my God. And I'm just a kid. I don't think about like turning off the light or anything, the porch light, or just saying we're not home. And knock after knock after knock, and me going, oh my God, will they stop coming? And giving out my candy until I eventually gave away every last piece of candy that I had hustled so hard for that whole night. And I was just like, I was so mad. Like it was my candy. And anyhow, the next morning, when I got up, Mom's like, hey, so how'd you do last night? Let's see that candy. Because, every parent's got to test their kids' candy. And I said, well, I don't have any. She was like, well, didn't you go trick or treating? And I said, yeah, but you didn't buy any candy. And we kept getting trick or treaters. And so I ended up giving it all away. And she looked at me for a second and she goes, well, why did you do that? And I said, because I didn't have the heart to tell them we didn't have any candy. And that was the end of that playback memory from what was pulled out of my life review. Those two. Now, as soon as that memory ended, I was lowered into this crowd of people, and it was like that orb that I was watching go on and watching the replay of those two moments. Now that orb was around me, and I was lowered into this crowd of people, and I was pulled through. And it was like in the movies, like when the camera goes and like it does like this, where it pans around you and everything's blurry until it gets right there, and then you like see it for a second and then it blurs back out. But I saw two people in line, and like I've said in the other episodes, I won't call them out on who they are. But one of them, the one that I saw, that I said, like right when it came around as I was passing them going through and I went, "Oh my God, you're here!" And they just went, "Eh." And that person knows that that's their little, that's their little, eh. That's how they answer. And so I was going through this crowd, and I also, as I went through, I saw my grandmother in line, the one that I went down to help move back up here. And uh, long story short, we'd had a falling out after all this, and we haven't talked, and I've never told her. I was always waiting for the right time to tell her that I saw her in line, and I saw her next in line. She was literally next in line. So that told me that the day comes that she closes her eyes, they're instantly going to open back up in her next body. And so there's no waiting in line for her or anything like that. Her do-over is automatic. But I never told her, and we haven't spoken. Like I said, that was falling out. That's a long story there. But so as I'm going through this crowd and I see two people that I know and one that I had that short interaction with, and I got brought to this through the crowd through these to these stairs, and these stairs led up to these. They look like locker room doors, like on the school gymnasium, the big metal ones, and you know how the janitor would put the chains around them and stuff like that. And that's what they look like. But as I was pulled to the middle doors, the chains just came apart like that, and the doors open, and I came to a funeral. And at this funeral, I'm sitting here looking, and I'm standing behind a lady and her two daughters and a young man. And on this side was another man and a younger man. And then right here in the middle, when I looked at these people, and I'm like, who are they? And I looked and I saw, and I won't say his name, but he knows this is the fourth time that I'm talking about him, my childhood best friend. When I say this guy's my brother, I mean, he was my best man at my wedding when I got married. I mean, we grew up together. Me and him are like that. And, you know, um, we've all had our inner demons, we've all struggled. I'm sure people have had, problems and whatnot. And um, when I went to go visit him before any of this experience happened, we'd caught up after me not seeing him for years. When I saw him, I saw that he was just still making bad life choices and things like that. And I was just like, I want you to do better, man. And when I saw in my vision, like I, I saw him laying in his casket, and what I saw standing there was his wife, his oldest daughter, his third daughter, and his youngest son. And at that time, the boy appeared about 11 or 12 years old. And at this moment, right now in time, because this all happened about a year and a half ago, so now the kid would be about 10. So when I told this story a year and a half ago, I said the kid looked like about 8 or 9, like so just aging, like it's getting closer to what I thought was the time frame of what I saw him. And he was dressed in all white, and it was his funeral. They were mourning his funeral, and I just saw that. Nothing was said. There were no words exchanged. I had no thoughts of any exchanges like I did with the energy and everything coming to me and making sense, like what I just saw in that sea of people. Nothing like that. All I saw was just the visual of what I saw was happening to my friend. So at that point, this is where it gets really trippy. So at that point, I'm brought past that, and I'm brought out, and what I felt like as soon as I was brought out, what I felt like was I thought I was in outer space, but there were no stars, but it felt like the void of outer space. And I'm kind of standing there, and I'm looking around, and I wasn't scared, but I was definitely like, where the hell am I? And even though it was like outer space, it was still bright and I could see. And the only way I can describe that is when I used to live on the beach in Northern California. On the beach at nighttime, it could be at 11:30 at night, and the moon would be so bright we would be doing shadow puppets on the beach. that's how much light it would give off. So it would almost be like a light being on, you know? Um, so it was bright in a sense like that, but it was dark. And I'm looking up, and I start to look up, and off in the distance, I see this light coming up to me. And as this light gets closer, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until like it stops. And in front of me, this light appears to be 200, 300 feet. I mean, it's just huge. It's a giant. And it's this lady right here. And this is my good friend Sharon that I worked with back in radio career. I've known her for over 20 something years. Um, she had bought a side business as a karaoke host, and I worked security at the place that she did karaoke for like 9 years. I mean, she was one of my best friends. Um, she had gotten cancer the year before my experience, and this is a picture of Sharon when I went and saw her, and this was just a few months before she passed away. So as you could see, the cancer at that point had really changed her. And as you can see, the puffiness of my face at that point, I hadn't had my um, gastric weight loss surgery yet. But anyhow, Sharon, my friend, she came to me, and I'm standing there and I'm looking, and Sharon is glowing like this from the neck down completely. All this, but she looked just like that first picture I showed you, just smiley with hair like that. And my nickname is Jumpy. And the reason being is because I have Tourette's. And so I twitch a lot and move a lot. Um, and she's always called me Jumpy by my nickname. And she came down, and as she got bigger and I noticed her, she goes, "Hi, Jumpy. Hi." And I was like, oh my God. And what went through my head was the whole like, wait a minute, you had cancer, you passed away, and that's going through my head. And I'm like, hi, Sharon, didn't you pass away from cancer? And in my head, and now mind you, this is back to like, we're not talking like this, we're communicating like this, just strictly telepathic. And I'm like, hey, but didn't you wait? Oh my God. And I'd like look like this, and I went, am I dead? Like that. And she goes, look, like that. And she pointed behind her, and behind her was this lady right here. That's Barbara. That was my mother-in-law from when I got married 20 years plus years before. She had also died from cancer. And when I saw her, I was like, Barbara, is that you? And she goes, uh-huh. And she points like this, and it was like off in that direction as I'm looking, because I see Sharon. Sharon points behind her. I see Barbara, and Barbara points that way. And I look over, and all in the distance, I saw my son. This guy right here. That's his mom. And that was me when I was 20 years old, and he passed away when he was 6 months old. And
Was it Sid's?
no, he was born premature. Um, Come to find out, my wife's had a tilted cervix, and so it caused her to go into premature labor early. And he did a lot of fighting. He was very sickly, but ultimately he caught a virus called meningococcal meningitis, and that is what killed him. And
Didn't stand a chance, did he?
yeah, and all I can say is since that day, I've never the Derek that day and the Derek today are two completely different people, because after that happened, I didn't give a shit. The childhood that I had growing up, everything that I did, like I felt like my boy was my reward. That's what I mean. I was going to college. I was putting myself through school to be a forest ranger. I was married. I had brought myself from a crap life to having everything that I wanted, and to have it taken away. And that's when I was like, there is no God. There's no such thing as God, because how could God do this to anybody? And when I saw Barbara, and I said, "Hey, Barbara," and she pointed, and I looked, and I saw it. He was off in the distance, and it was so bright and colorful where the sun came down. It was like a giant dome, and in the middle of this dome was one of those old merry-go-round, those metal ones you see on the playground that we were kids. We try to spin our buddies to fling them off of there. That one, and it was a playground of kids playing. There were young kids like him. There were older kids, teenagers, and he looked like he was about like 6 or 7 years old. He looked like he was about the same age as I was when I'd had that experience seeing those little kids. And he was just playing. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I looked at Barbara and I said, "Is that Cody?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Can I go see him?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." And I took one step. And as soon as I did, I could feel it was like a tether behind me. And it was like a rubber band stretched to the max. And it was just one step. And I realized, and in that moment, I'm like, wait a minute. If this snaps, you don't go back. This is what's going through my head. Your grandma, they're all waiting on you with a U-Haul. They're going back. Okay. This whole experience and what happened to me, I'm like, I don't have a clue, but I'm like, wait a minute. They're in a U-Haul. They're waiting for me. I can't. And I looked up and I looked at my son and I thought about like my daughter's at home and my granddaughter. I was like, I can't. I can't go. I can't. And Sharon just leans in and she goes, "Okay, bye, Jumpy. Bye." And she just drifted off. And and the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. And so to go back to me waking up, I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And in the process, the doctor's like, "Hey, Mr. Riddle, do you know what day it is? Do you know who the president is?" And I remember I was like, Donald Trump. And it was like, it, he says, "Okay, well, I just want you to know that," like, once he realized I had my bearings, he says, "I want you to know that I didn't, you didn't pop any stitches in your stomach." And I'm like, "Okay." And he proceeds to tell me like what happened with my spleen. And like, I'm trying to soak this in, but at the same time in my head, I'm like, what the hell just happened? Was that a dream? Was that a dream? And for 3 days, I was in intensive critical condition. Okay. And I mean, I'm on the morphine drip. Here's my scar all the way. I mean, I was opened up. I was in the fetal position. I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. I was so out of it. But every moment that I opened my eyes, that I could even have the slightest moment of clarity, that entire, from the beginning to the end, like every single moment was just replayed over and over in my head through the intensive critical condition for the first 3 days. The next 2 days, I was in guarded condition. So I was out of intensive, then to guarded condition, and I was there for 2 days. Then after that, that's when they moved me to my regular room, and I was there for 17 days before I came home. But when they moved me to my regular room that day, I called my friend and I told him straight up, "Dude, you need to hear something. And you need to know that if you don't change, you're going to die." Straight up, man. And he listened to every word that I had to say. And I told him, and not even a week later, before I left the hospital, he's still alive, but he had his worst experience ever that he had with making bad choices. And anyhow, he's gotten his life together and he's making good choices now. And he calls me every now and again from work. "Hey, I'm still working. I'm doing good. Just thought I'd say." And I feel like I really that made a difference, because, and I hope it did. I hope I saved his life. And what I saw and everything, it's every person out there has a favorite movie or a favorite song that they've seen or heard 100,000 times that they could recite every. And this experience for somebody who was literally on death's doorstep is like a song that I've heard 1,000 times, like my favorite movie that I've seen 100 times. Every single moment of every single frame I recall, everything down to how I felt, to looking at the people in the back. It was so vivid. And the people in the back, I mean, everybody, it wasn't like casual Friday. I mean, there were people in the back that were like mangled, like maybe they were in accidents, like one in particular just kind of looked like he was walking around, and it was kind of like Beetlejuice where people were still jacked up, and that whole like, here's your number and you're waiting for your number in the weirdest way. It was kind of like that because it was like 900 years before they're even allowed to get back into the line. And
It's amazing how some of these memories or movies, I mean, not memories, some of these movies can touch a nerve with us into ears. Like that is so similar. And they must, tap into something during their creative mind in making these, or, somehow they get this right.
that's all I could think of because, up until this happened to me, hearing about other people's near death experiences or reading about the afterlife, it was always just like, oh, wow, that's cool. Wow, that's trippy. It wasn't until this happened to me that I start watching other people's experiences and reading, and they're saying the same exact things in this, in just different ways. One lady I
Yes.
went to, she's like, I was taken to 3 different levels, and I'm like, well, I was shown 3 different things, and it's weird because these people I never met in my life, and to have the same exact things and the same exact feelings, like
And we tell it differently too. So I think people hearing it and even us listening to them don't get how similar these really was to ours because they're talking differently, describing it differently.
exactly, but it's still all the same thing.
Right.
It's like getting different directions to the same place. When our son passed away, and we'd had his funeral and we buried him, uh, very, very horrible moment in my life. But about 6 weeks after that, Barbara, his grandmother, my wife's mom, she fell out in the kitchen, like collapsed, and we called the ambulance and blah blah, and what the hell and everything. And, the doctors, they say, well, the cancer has gotten pretty advanced. And we're like, what cancer? And Barbara's like, well, I have cancer. And we're like, you have cancer? And you didn't say anything? Why didn't you tell us? And she said, because, you guys just lost, you got your own band. We're like, are you serious? And I mean, bless her heart for not wanting to bring that onto us. But at that point, and what she'd had was a melanoma that started on her knee as like a wart. And I mean, this thing was like this big around, like it looked like a mushroom by the end. And from that point, from when she fell out, I mean, it was downhill. And it was like a month and a half later that we buried her. I mean, it was. And on the day she passed away, because at this point she's on hospice care, she's at home. We're at the point where we're just keeping her on morphine to keep her comfortable. Um, and I don't know if you've ever had any experience with people that are towards the end that are
Yeah.
terminally ill or anything, but a lot of times just before they pass away, they'll get this last burst of energy where it's almost as if they know they're leaving, and they get this last burst of energy to say their goodbyes and stuff like that. And Barbara had that 2 days before she passed away. It was like 2 or 3 days, but right before she passed away, she was actually walking around. And before that, it was just give her more morphine and she's back out. And at this point, she was up. I mean, she wasn't skipping around the house, but she was up in the kitchen, um, and she was just kind of moving around that day and everything. And she was laying down, and we decided, now would be a good time for my wife to go to the courthouse to file the papers for custody for her little brother. Because we ended up, obviously taking custody of him. He was like 12 at the time. And I'm like, yeah, you can, you go do all that stuff. And I was just sitting there with Barbara, and we were just kind of talking. And she reached over and grabbed my hand. And she looked at me and she said, I just want you to know that someday when it's your time, me and your son will be there waiting for you. And she was there. And I know, like I feel like my friend Sharon, like that is why Sharon came to me, because Sharon had just passed away the summer before. She was the closest person to being that I knew that was close. That is why she came to me, because she had to let me know that what was going on was like, this is the real deal. When I said, like, am I dead? Is this? And then she pointed to Barbara, and that was and then when I asked, I was like, Barbara, like all that went through my head, and I was like, what? And right as I asked her, where's my son? And she pointed, and there he was. I was like, oh my God. And yeah, it was,
Eric, that's beautiful.
yeah, it was, it gave me the most tremendous peace. His birthday is August 13th. His birthday was literally just last week. And when he was born on a Friday. So he was born on a Friday the 13th. I mean, the omens or whatever.
I have a disabled sister who was born on the 13th. And so it's kind of a thing, with her too.
It's actually my lucky number with my Powerball now. I picked 13, but every year on his birthday after he passed away, it was just, I mean, I'd hit the bottle as soon as I woke up, and that was, by 9 a.m, I'd be obliterated. And I didn't give a shit. I didn't care. There was nothing, there was no God, there was nothing. And it wasn't until I decided that I don't know, one day I just realized that, if he could see me now at the bottom of this bottle, he would be so disappointed in me. Because as any parent out there who wants to raise their child to be the best they could be, what kind of example was I setting for him?
So you can still be a father to him, knowing he's watching you.
Yeah.
And be an example.
And I have his sisters to think about and everything. And I did put the bottle down. And just this last May 4th was 3 years of sobriety. So I did this whole journey and all this on my own before any of this happened. So, so that was for him. And I think that was part of my reward, was the creators. And I say that because, like I said, it felt like a council. It wasn't one singular being. It felt like beings, and they were all as supreme as the next. And they allowed me to see that he is in a peaceful place.
What was he doing?
He was playing. He was playing on that thing. That
merry-go-round
thing. There were kids, and I just saw, and it was off in the distance. He was just playing, and I looked, and he looked like he was like 6 or 7, like the same age I was in that life review when I was watching the TV, seeing those.
Okay.
Kids. And he was just playing, and that's when I said, I looked at Barbara and I said, "Can I go see him?" And she goes, "Yeah." And that's when I took one step, and when I did, it felt like a tether, like almost like my portal, like if I stepped away, that the more I stepped away, the more it closed. And that's it dawned on me. And it was a trip too, because where he was like off in the distance. It was like I knew it was going to be I was ready to make this little trek. Like, okay, I just got to jog over there. But it was that jog and me going, wait a minute, I can only go if I keep going, there's no going back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, in my experience, I'm like, wait, everybody's parked with a U-Haul waiting for me. They don't. I've got I had a granddaughter at that point. I had my daughter Isabella. She's still here at home. She's got 1 more year left of school. Like I had stuff to do, and as bad as I wanted to go see him, I couldn't. And so I made that choice to stay. And I also feel like I was let to see him, because I know that as long as I try to live my life and leave it better than I found it, I mean, not to say anything about anybody's religion, but the food that I've eaten, the people that I've shared my bed with, the the bad choices or drugs that I've done, none of that came up in my life review. It was all on how I treated other people and how I lived. And I mean, I just, if you really truly live your life a good life, can you, no matter who your God is, if you really truly live a good life, is your God really going to condemn that person because they didn't show up at a building on Sunday at 10, or because they had bacon on their hamburger, or because they had two lovers? Like, I mean, it's all a moral call. It's the free will. It's the choices you make. And and just this last Saturday for his birthday, it's not depressing days anymore. We all got together. We went out to the lake. We had a barbecue. We had a fantastic, wonderful day, and we even had birthday cake.
What would you answer now if you were asked, do you believe in God?
Um, I definitely believe in a higher power. I believe in a creator. Um, I believe we have a purpose. And I also believe, and this might open a can of worms, but I also believe that this is just a shell. And until you open your eyes and take that first breath, you're literally like a car with no gasoline. Like, your soul is what makes you a person. That is just my personal belief and how I feel after having my experience. That is what makes you go. Otherwise, you're pretty much just a car with no gas in it. Until you go like that.
Yeah. Like those people in hell just waiting.
Just waiting for their do-over. And see, and this is also the part that made sense about like the deja vu and past lives and stuff like that. That's exactly what that is. But you don't get to remember the mistakes you made. You come back and you might get a glimpse of your past life, but that's the thing, is you got to take the test over, and that's why you have to get it perfect, because there's no cheat sheets, there's no remembering, there's no I remember what happened last go around. Like, it literally has to be the essence of who you are throughout your entire life.
I hear a lot of new age NDEers talk about reincarnation and there's no judgment, and like we all get a get out of hell free card, like we all go to heaven and row a boat, It's like, and I'm like you, and your experiences, like that's what I believe is true. Like what you talk about, that's what I believe is reality on the other side. I don't think, oh well, we do all this stuff. They say like even Charles Manson, he gets to reincarnate and there's no judgment. And like, so you just do
After
anything to
900
anybody
years.
thinking that it'll never affect you. I don't believe that.
Yeah, no. What mistakes you don't make up for in this life, you pay for in the next. And Charles Manson, I can tell you, is the back of that line. Okay, for 900 years, just like my abuser was, just like those priests are, just like that neighbor who took advantage of his susceptible neighbor all his life. Just those black-hearted people that have zero empathy. you know as corny and as old-fashioned as it sounds, like, love is the answer. That's all. And when I saw my son in that area where I was, what I felt, there was no hate, there was no impurity, there was no stress, there was no, like, everything felt so pure. Like, where that was, like, that was heaven. That was heaven. And he's spending his whole eternity being a kid and playing. I mean, that's what he gets to
Yeah.
do every
And
day.
he never had to get hurt. He never had to get sick. He
No,
never had to know heartbreak.
no. And he gets to spend his eternity being and just playing. And that right there is like, that's not heaven. That's, that is, and everything. And it was weird in the sense that it wasn't like unicorns and rainbows popping off everywhere, but everything was so loving and peaceful and so pure that there was just, badness did not even exist on that level.
And it's so ironic that, you're standing there in heaven and here's your son, like on a silver platter, everything you want, everything you've desired, and you chose your other children, your grandmother, the people that need you. You chose others, just like the Halloween candy. You'd
Right.
rather ate that candy, but you gave it away to everybody else because you couldn't just
I
like
did,
not.
and I wasn't happy about it either.
Right. And we're not happy sometimes. It's like, oh crap, I gotta do the right thing. Say if you find a purse and say you're broke and you find this purse and you open it up, it's full of money, but still excuse me, ma'am, you dropped your purse. You know, what I
Right,
mean,
right.
we have to do the right thing. It makes us feel better though when we do it.
Yeah, and it took my experience for now for me to realize that I am extremely empathic. Growing up, I thought I was an emotional kid. I tried not to hide it. I cried at the end of Old Yeller, but in a way that don't count. Everybody cries at the end of Old Yeller, E.T. or and I just I always thought maybe I was overly emotional, and it wasn't until I had my experience that and I saw that review and I went back to that moment with that kid and I remember that. I remember that morning. I remember looking at that and seeing that kid and I remember feeling laying there and that's what hit me. Like I was feeling his pain, his sadness, and I was just like and like I could feel that and that's what made me flip out so bad. And since my experience, God, I go grocery shopping, and it's grocery shopping is just such a chore. Like I hardly ever leave the house now. And I'm very picky about my circle now. Um, I have I have cut off a lot. I went through my Facebook and I deleted like 85 people. No explanation, no reason. I just felt that the energy that was brought by these people wasn't the kind that I wanted in my circle. It was no hard feelings. I didn't cuss them out. I didn't give an explanation. I just clicked. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, I do that on my channel because um, I just want this channel and the comments in it to be a happy place. I don't want negativity affecting me or anybody else. Just like take that somewhere else because
Right.
not that I just have to have all compliments and, wonderful reviews. It's just we don't need that negativity right here.
Exactly. And, my biggest one is, a lot of the people that are not believers, I don't expect you don't have to believe. I'm just simply sharing my experience of what happened with me when I died. I did die, you know, and I medically wise, everything. And I've got every bit of proof to show it. And, you know, until you go disagreeing with me, because I've read comments before where that's not what happened and this is what you have to do. And I ask them, well, what was your near death experience like? Well, I haven't had one. Okay, well, then until you do, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is like and again, I'm not putting down anybody's practice or religions or what they think is the proper way to be a good Christian or a good Catholic or a good Muslim or a good person. I
And
am just saying what I saw and felt.
yeah, and you're just stating the facts. And you're not trying to push the Christian religion
No,
because
I'm
you're not even saying, really anything overly religious. It's just this is what you experienced. This is how you feel about things now, and that's where it ends.
right. And it's the simplest thing of just love the next person, do the best you can to help, you know, and and just be a good person. I mean, if you're really truly a good person, then on what level can any religion condemn you?
Yeah, and we all know the cruel Christians.
Yes, yes,
And if that's what religion does, and I'm not knocking religion, I'm all for it. That's how I come to know Jesus as a child. Was my grandma making us 5 kids go to church and go to Sunday school? My parents didn't go to church. She made sure a church bus come and got us there. And when I was a teenager, she would have me stay with her on the weekend, and buddy, my butt would be in church. And I thank her for that. I
yeah,
think I'm glad that I have my religion. Now, I don't go to church anymore because nothing fits with me. This right here, talking to
no,
you, that's where I find my church.
that's exactly how I feel. I don't need to go to a building to show that I just live as a good person. I don't, I constantly practice random acts of kindness. I mean, every year for Thanksgiving, I save a little bit of leftovers, but let's face it, how many people throw out their leftovers? I make up plates and I just go give them to the homeless people downtown just because, um, you know, um, several times coming outside of a store, if I see someone, asking for food, I don't give them money, but I'll go buy them food. I mean, and it's $2, it's $3, and I'm not rich. I'm on Social Security disability. This accident, losing my spleen, I'm medically disabled now, and I'm poor, but I still try to do the best I can to at least.
Well, I would hope that you would get a lawyer and get compensated.
Well, yeah, that's in the process. That is definitely in the
I pray
process.
that works out for you, because you
I
could
I
have died,
I
and you
did
did
know.
die.
Yeah. And I am permanently. I have to take medication for the rest of my life. I don't have a spleen, and a spleen helps regulate 20% of your.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's not what you signed up for when you went to the hospital.
oh, no, that's not. And I have a purpose of being here. There's really, I didn't die, and I'm supposed to be here. And since all this has happened, and I don't have a spleen, and I'm immunocompromised. I have since got COVID twice, and I'm still here. And I'm not knocking it and saying, I mean, it's killed people, and that's a fact. But I'm just saying, I really feel like I have a purpose here, and I feel like that purpose is to help other
What
people.
about that radio station work you used to do? Any way of combining that with this? Maybe your own podcast?
I did that show for years. I did radio for years, but there's one thing about that business that I've learned is there's a saying, and it's called "here today, gone today." Okay, there is no such thing as job security. There is no union. There's always somebody jockeying for position. Um, I had longevity because I was constantly trying to learn how to do other things. If I wasn't doing commercial production and making commercials to put on the air, I was doing voiceovers for commercials. If I wasn't doing voiceovers, I was doing air shifts. If I wasn't doing air shifts, I was doing promotional setups and setting up the broadcast systems at, like, when you see the radio stations around town, hey, we're broadcasting live down here at blah blah blah. I'm the one who would set up that equipment and do all that. So
I
I did
have
work.
this fantasy that I have this like a little Scooby-Doo van, and I have my NDE TV on the side, but it's mobile, and I drive around the country getting like in the ears, and bringing you in my little camper, and having the sets all set up and ready, and doing it like we can be together, like in person, and make these versus like we are now. I have
Yeah,
this fantasy of doing that. I don't know if it'll happen.
yeah.
But I don't have
Definitely.
the camera and the technical and all. I think it'd take a lot more skill. But
You can do it. You can do it.
I think I could do it just as good as I am doing now. I mean, it would just be in person.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time. I really enjoyed your story.
Thank you so much. I
And
appreciate being here, and I enjoy telling my story.
and I wish you all the best.
I thank you very much. And if I could just say one last thing to
Mhm.
anybody who's heard this today, just be the best you can be and pay it forward. That's all. There's no loopholes. There's no guidelines. Just be good. Just be good.
It matters, doesn't it?
It absolutely. That's all that mattered. That's all that mattered in my life review. Like I said, bad choices that I made to hurt myself, none of that came up. That's me hurting myself, and you were not on your own. Like, duh.
It kind of makes me think of prison when they separate the violent offenses from the nonviolent offenses.
Right, right. You're learning your lesson. Yes. Like, okay, yeah, don't do this to yourself.
Yeah.
But
All right.
that's
Well,
it.
thank you, Derek.
No problem. Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.